Okay, Espionage Guide 1.0. How to generate espionage resources. 1. Define one city as an espionage city. This is done either with Code of Laws or the Great Wall, whichever you get first. If you don't have Code of Laws, try to make the espionage city the same one you put the Forbidden Palace in, so you don't have to forego the reduced maintenance costs. Always run as many spy specialists as possible in this city, and build any espionage generating building here first. It will generate great spies only. Settle the first one and build Scotland Yard with the second. After that, settle each and every one in this city. Be first to communism and receive a great spy. Use the nationhood civic. A few turns of 100% espionage slider targeted at one single person. Use this city to output all your spies. Try to run the slider at 10% espionage early. Defense espionage tactics. Generate points and towards the right opponents. Place one spy in every city, every resource or other point that might be pillaged. Place spies in a row and a wall to cover an area an enemy spy must cross to get to an anticipated target. Capital, military city, border city. Can also place them along the border as a wall. Target his espionage city or cities and destroy espionage point generating buildings. Run the counter-espionage missions every 10 turns, if needing extra defenses such as before a war declaration or otherwise. Non-aggressive information gathering espionage tactics. Scout out his entire territory, map out all cities. Reveal his research. Locate and track his stack of doom. Note strategic resources and their locations. Analyze city defenses. Attempt to ascertain where the specialized cities are. Wonders, production, military, science, gold, etc. Steal technologies. Position spies next to each of his cities instead of inside them, as if he uses spies to defend himself. If you are far more likely to get caught. You retain the ability to see units in the city and the surrounding area. The stack of doom, the strategic resources, city defenses, and the specialized cities you can mark with signs. For defenders in the stack of doom, also write which turn it was last updated. Non-aggressive does not mean risk-free. The spies may still be caught. Economic warfare espionage tactics. You can destroy terrain improvements on commerce generating resources, which are usually also happy resources. You can destroy buildings in the specialized cities, the Bank of the Gold City, Observatory, Library of the Science City. Run poison if he has little health resources, and unhappiness if he has few happy resources in the most critical cities. Destroy towns and villages. Destroy the mines surrounding the wonder production cities. Destroy production of wonders. Cultural border espionage tactics. Use the spread culture to his critical border cities. Sabotage the culture producing buildings. Military strategic espionage tactics. Destroy the military improvements in his main unit producing cities. Barracks, forge, factory, dry dock, etc. Disconnect strategic military resources, copper, iron, ivory, horses, oil, uranium, coal, aluminum, by destroying the terrain improvements and also destroying roads connecting them. Destroy the mines surrounding the military production cities. When taking cities, use the city revolt mission to avoid needing to bombard the city. Diplomatic espionage tactics. Force change a civic, if favorable of the AI, or religion on either one of parties you wish to worsen the relationship of. False flag operations are possible to sour the relationship between two human players. The further away from yourself they are, the better. A different continent is ideal. Perform the cultural border espionage missions on one of their border cities, as you have nothing to gain from a cultural war far away from yourself. They will be more likely to suspect each other. Intercontinental spy insertion methods for human players. If he has neighbors, send them in bulk in galleons, transports, and offload near their borders within the neighbors' borders. Then cross the borders by land. Can be smuggled in galleons and transports under the guise of sending a great merchant or missionaries. If there are no open border agreements, caravels, East Indiamen, and attack submarines can sail into their borders to drop off a spy. Try to make it seem as if the caravel is merely exploring. Otherwise, sail into the edge of his borders, drop off the spy, and make sure you can sail away in the same turn, and hope he didn't notice. This is not practical due to the limited transport capacity, and only for special occasions where there are no neighbors to go through. It's difficult to transport enough spies to another continent and slow to replace them once used. That was Espionage 1.0 by MIKKOW. All right, The Power of Subtle Great Spies, Mad Scientist. The power of espionage on marathon speed. We all love the idea of espionage. Spy specialists, great spies, espionage points, plus the ability to adjust the slider. But how do we utilize this into a game? Do we adjust the slider? Beeline constitution, democracy, communism? Or run spy specialists in all our cities? And how best to use a great spy? Well, here is an article on my view on how to use espionage to support mostly weaker teching leaders. Do you not need to be industrious, financial, or philosophical? You do not need to be industrious, financial, or philosophical. Although philosophical helps, it works very well for imperialistic, spiritual, and protective leaders, although the warmonger trait works well also. This plan assumes there will be at least one tech leader, even if you have a well-established cottage economy going. A specialist economy is not compatible here, because that produces a lot of scientists, which is not what we want. The basic idea here is to force out an early great spy with the Great Wall Wonder and play a normal teching game with an emphasis on early diplomacy. Diplomacy may be tossed aside once you get over the hump and access jails and intelligence agencies. The buildings we want. Palace, +4 espionage points. For the reason, your capital will be your espionage city, for that reason. Courthouse, +2 espionage points. It opens up one spy specialist slot. It opens with the Code of Laws, so we want to target this tech. Of course, some civilizations get it on a different tech. I think Montezuma. Jail, +4 espionage points, +50% espionage, and it allows 2 spy specialists. Opens with Constitution, so if you can manage to get nationalism before being the first to liberalism, take Constitution as the free tech. Be warned, this is not easy. Intelligence agency, +8 espionage points, +50% to espionage. It opens up 2 spy specialists. You get it with communism, which also gives you a free great spy. So beeline communism if possible. The Security Bureau, +8 espionage points, 50% defense against enemy spy missions. Helps to thwart spy missions. Open 2 spy specialists. Opens with democracy. Scotland Yard, 100% espionage point bonus must be founded with the Great Spy. Castle, plus 25% espionage points, obsolete with economics, so we want to delay this tech as long as possible. Wonders, Great Wall, of prime importance for the Great Spy points, keeping the barbs out, and getting great generals from defensive wars. Basically, if you miss this wonder, adjust your game and try a different strategy. Kremlin allows 2 additional spy specialists, so you want this in the capital if possible. National Epic to speed up great spy production. Another point to mention here, there is a random event called the Best Defense Quest, where if you build enough castles in the required time, you get a plus 25 espionage point bonus to the city with the Great Wall. It's a very valuable event in this game, this type of game. Be on the lookout for it. That's it. I would not recommend any other except the Parthenon if you can build it in a different city. The best civics are nationhood, mandatory here. Pacifism, providing it does not kill the economy, and any other is fine. Great spies give you 3 options. Infiltrate, which gives you a certain number of espionage points, but against 1 AI. Scotland Yard, which is great, but you need espionage points to actually use it. And settling, which gets you plus 3 beakers and plus 12 espionage points. Later in the game, you can use some great spies for golden ages. So this technique requires patience and diplomacy. Warring is fine as long as you have 1 or 2 buddies who are technologically advanced. Feel free to kill off the others at your will. Adopt a state religion that the other AIs have, especially AIs with cities close to your borders, and the nearest city has that religion. If the religion is not there, spread it there. You will save on espionage points to make up for the small hammer cost. Finally, before discussing the nuts and bolts of the play, a few comments on what the techs you need to prioritize. Understand that you should not be neglecting military, nor useful beaker producing techs, especially education. You should optimally try to get 1 great scientist above most of education. Alphabet opens up the ability to build a spy. Code of Laws opens courthouses. Philosophy, pacifism. Engineering opens castles. Nationalism opens the nationhood civic. Constitution opens jails. Democracy opens security bureau. Communism opens the intelligence agency. Now with all those civics, techs, and buildings are not what gets you an advantage. What gets you the edge is settled great spies. After building the Great Wall, wait patiently for your first great person. If you can avoid the urge to run a scientist, it should be a great spy. Settle him. Do not build Scotland Yard. That settle great spy is enough to get you some techs. Once you unlock Code of Laws, build a courthouse in the capital and run a spy specialist. That gets you plus 3 great spy points to go with the 2 from the Great Wall. Now you may add a scientist or 2 to speed up great person production. Hopefully the second great person is a great spy, which you can use to build Scotland Yard. As simple as that. Once you have the framework of a settled great spy in Scotland Yard, you are on your way to steeling yourself to a win. Future great spies should be settled in the capital. But if you are ambitious and know you can get the free great spy with communism, you may want to build a second espionage city with a settled great spy in Scotland Yard. Once you have gotten 4 great spies, you should be up to constitution, democracy, communism, so those buildings will start to take the bulk of the espionage work. Now use those extra great spies to infiltrate specific AIs or burn them for great artists. GAS. I think that's great artists. Where you want to send the great spies. Look at the espionage screen and check out the AI cities. It is a simple matter to find which cities are cheaper. Send the spies there. Also remember to get those cities to your state religion and make sure you have open borders, as that improves the espionage point cost of the mission. But most important, let your spy sit in that city 5 turns. Each turn is a 10% reduction in espionage point cost. This technique also allows you to have a steady stream of stolen text, not just one region of history like an early infiltration would do. There are some links to the Chairman Mao game, and let's see. Yeah, Chairman Mao's plan to start. Illustrating the power of the espionage game. In that game, he was able to steal in order horseback riding, meditation, polytheism, calendar, compass, optics, music, banking, military tradition, steel, physics, steam power, corporation, military science, railroad assembly line, radio, biology, rocketry, fission, fascism, and ecology. All from essentially 6 great people, 4 settled great spies, 1 Scotland Yard, and a great scientist which we use to bulb education. This also works very nicely with Genghis Khan of all people. Get the wall at all costs. He has enough starting text to get some sort of military. Use imperialistic to get a few good military producing cities. Target horseback riding for the unique unit, unique building, and fight defensive war with the agile, unique unit to get several great generals. Warmonger your most hated civilizations while you play nice and spy on your friends. It's a very powerful and interesting way to get Genghis Khan to win a space race. Here is a walkthrough using, let's see, so it's missing the photos. Walkthrough for Settle Great Spy Game. Under the Civ Strategy and Tips, April 4, 2008. Okay, I have in the past said using the espionage slider is a poor idea, as you end up playing from a position of weakness. Always behind in tech, in light of another RPC of mine, Return of the Russian Spy, I retract that statement. Roleplay challenge, Return of the Russian Spy. He played a very powerful game with the espionage slider, no science slider after Code of Law, and got a space race victory. The point of this article is still using settled spies to supplement the traditional research path, so I'll leave it as it is. The Great Wall of Sulemein, Melted Canary. The Great Wall of Sulemein, a warmonger's guide to espionage. Before I would begin, I'd like to thank Mad Scientist for his wonderful article, The Power of Great Spies, which served as the initial inspiration for me to develop this strategy. Highly recommend anyone wishing to familiarize themselves with my strategy read it first. The link is below, as it served as my foundation. Secondly, I would like to admit that this is both my first article and my first post. So that's what Melted Canary said. He's been a long-time lurker. Most of the articles in the sub-forum on the Civ4 strategy articles. So he's using Monarch, Marathon, Big and Small, Huge, Aggressive, and 18 random AIs. There are several basic tenets which serve as the pillars of this strategy. Rex in the early game as much as possible. The Ottomans don't have a unique building, unique unit, starting tech, or even trait that assists in fighting wars at the very beginning of the game. Thus put the imperialistic trait to good use and pump out as many settlers as possible, grabbing good spots that will be the foundation of your empire. Luckily, thanks to the next tenet, you won't have much trouble defending them from barbarians. Build a Great Wall. It first gives you the point, two things. First, it gives you points necessary to give you first great spy. Second is that it repels barbarians, which means defending your wrecked cities is much easier. Run a normal cottage economy. Unfortunately, it's impossible to have an economy that depends entirely on spies, as it's nearly impossible to generate the kind of espionage points you would need to steal every single tech. So before we get to the next tenet, you need to realize that you should be prepared to build a strong cottage economy that will serve as the basis of your research. Make friends with a nearby techer. Certainly leaders have a tendency to be way ahead of their peers technologically. Certain leaders tend to be ahead of their peers technologically, and you'll want to find one of these nearby and start investing all your espionage points into this neighbor. Then you must do everything within your power to keep him on your good side. Adopt his religion, his favorite civic, join his wars, etc. You want to be on his good side because having open borders, sharing a religion, gives you discounts on your espionage point spending. Also, if your spies get caught, it can lead to diplomacy penalties, so you want to be friendly with your target to serve as a buffer. Use tech stealing to augment your normal research. Thanks to the invested espionage points you have against your tech-savvy friend, you can find out what he's researching and research something else. Then, when he's done, you steal whatever tech he's been working on. Then, to get extra mileage out of your stolen tech, feel free to start trading it away to other leaders as long as it's not critically important tech. Critically important tech. Thanks to the fact that most leaders like to have a monopoly on their newest tech before they start to trade it away. You can beat the AIs to the punch by trading away their hard-earned tech long before they're willing. Go to war when it's profitable. Sulemein is imperialistic, and in order to get those extra great generals, you're going to need to knock some heads. With my game settings, it's very difficult to get a domination conquest win due to the large map size and innumerable enemy AIs. So constant war is not a good thing. However, there are many situations that going to war is very profitable, such as gaining resources, good land, capturing wonders and holy cities, or even just for diplomatic purposes. Learn to be opportunistic with your fighting. If you have something to gain by fighting, then fight. If you will lose more than you gain, do not fight. Number 7, beeline to techs that give espionage or military benefits. Techs that either give you new, powerful military units or build new buildings that help augment your espionage point gain are of critical importance. Other techs can typically be traded for or stolen. I know this may sound like a shocker, but I typically avoid the liberalism race and instead choose to beeline to gunpowder through the much shorter guilds path, due to the fact that the Janissaries are very powerful against medieval units, but aren't necessarily any better against units of its own age. Texts like Code of Laws, Constitution, Communism, etc. are of critical importance due to the buildings they unlock, all of which give espionage benefit. Why Sulemein? When originally deciding to give Mad Scientist article Settle Great Spies strategy, I ultimately decided that Sulemein would have wonderful synergy with such a strategy. 1. His traits. A philosophical leader, Sulemein will get his great spies earlier and more frequently, ultimately resulting in more espionage points and thus more tech stolen. This especially hurts in the earliest stages of the game, when your only source of great people points is the Great Wall, which gives you a measly +2 great person points. Second, Sulemein's imperialistic, which means he has many incentives to rapid expand and wage war. As I listed in the basic tenets, the Great Wall allows you to rapid expand in peace thanks to its repelling of barbarians, and if an enemy is foolish enough to declare war on you, any units you kill within your own borders will give you simply ridiculous amounts of great general points thanks to the bonus from both the Great Wall and being imperialistic. Finally, espionage synergizes well with warfare, due to the fact that you can afford to lower your science slider a bit to pay for war upkeep, since you can steal text to make up for your temporarily lowered science output. You can also invest espionage points into your war enemy in order to see his cities, thus knowing how well they are defended. This intelligence can be critical in successful warmongering. His unique building The hammam is one of the best unique buildings in the game, mainly because of the +2 happiness and +2 health, so universally applicable that you'll want one in nearly every city. The +2 happiness is huge. It not only helps your cities grow larger, but it also helps deal with war weariness you will likely encounter from being at war. His unique unit, the Janissary, is an amazing unit, and if gunpowder is obtained early enough, can dominate an entire era of warfare. The Ottoman unique unit couldn't have better timing either for reasons I'll explain next. The Ottomans are a Renaissance powerhouse. Espionage really becomes very powerful in the Renaissance era, roughly the same time you get Janissaries. The nationalism, constitution, democracy tech path greatly multiplies your espionage output. In addition, these techs also give you other very important benefits. Nationalism allows you to run nationhood, a civic which gives you plus 25% espionage points in all cities, +2 happiness from barracks, and allows you to draft units. This last benefit is huge for one very important reason. Janissaries can be drafted. I will discuss this huge benefit in more detail later in the article. Constitution unlocks jails, a critical building which not only gives more espionage points and allows you to run more spy specialists, but also reduces war weariness by an impressive 25%, allowing you to wage war with fewer hindrances. Democracy unlocks the Security Bureau, which gives you more espionage point spy specialists, and also two wonderful civics, universal suffrage and emancipation, which will be discussed later. Sulemein also builds universities, a Renaissance building, unlocked by education, twice as fast. Finally, military science, a Renaissance technology, unlocks the ability to build military academies from your great generals. Because you unlock great generals much quicker, you will be able to build military academies in nearly every important production city. Civics. As with any strategy, some civics synergize with it better than others. I will go through each category of civics and highlight which civics I think fit best. I will not bother to rate the first civic in each category for obvious reasons. Government. Hereditary rule. Civics pretty good for early game, better than despotism almost by default. If you have monarchy, go ahead, use the civic. Combined with the hammam, you can make your cities grow very large thanks to a lot of happiness. Under government, representation. Normally the hallmark of philosophical leaders does not work well with this strategy. The only city likely to be running a lot of specialists is your capital, which should be running spies. The +3 beakers for each specialist is not going to count for much. Meanwhile, only your biggest cities receive the happiness benefit from representation, while any city can gain happiness from hereditary rule. I'd recommend sticking with hereditary rule, especially since you'll soon unlock universal suffrage from democracy. Police state. Although I prefer universal suffrage for its potential to turn riverside science cities into respectable production facilities, police state has some definite benefits that can't be overlooked. Minus 25% war weariness and plus 25% bonus military productions, nothing to sneeze at. If you're at war and you feel like you need more units and war weariness is an issue, adopt police state. Universal suffrage. I feel as though universal suffrage has the most synergy, due to the fact that your main research will be funded by cottage economy. The +1 hammer in every town can help you build infrastructure quickly and can turn riverside towns with levees into respectable production facilities. Also, the ability to rush by production is a powerful ability. Legal. Vassalage. By definition, it's better than barbarism, and the +2 experience and free unit upkeeps are useful for war. Running vassalage until you get nationhood is a good idea. Bureaucracy, because your capital is going to be a great spy factory and very little else. Bureaucracy has very little synergy with this strategy. You're better with vassalage. Nationhood. It's a wonderful civic for this strategy. The 25% bonus to espionage in every city is wonderful. +2 happiness from the barracks helps to offset war weariness and draft unhappiness. Nationhood also has no upkeep whatsoever, making it the cheapest civic to run in the game. Finally, drafting is a very powerful mechanic, particularly in the hands of the Ottoman. First, the Janissary is draftable, and Janissaries are unlocked around the same time that nationhood is. Second, the Ottoman unique building has +2 happiness, combined with the +2 happiness from the barracks, help to offset the potentially crippling unhappiness that drafting can cause. Drafting allows even your low production cities to contribute to the war effort and also allows you to quickly produce a defense force in cities under attack. Free speech. I typically switch to free speech later in the game when most of my cottages have developed into towns and the later units start to cost more than one population to draft. The +2 gold on every town greatly boosts your income, and the +100% culture allows your border cities to have access to most of their tiles earlier. Labor. Slavery is the civic in this game that's a good early game choice for reasons that other guides will be able to explain much better. Use it, abuse it, love it. Serfdom is terrible. Don't use it. Caste system doesn't let us run infinite spies. The only specialist we care about in this strategy. Essentially useless civic to us. Emancipation. Finally, another labor civic we actually care about. Since you'll be beelining for democracy, you can switch to this early and lay down some unhappiness for every other civic in the world until they too switch to emancipation. The quicker growth on your cottages will also help your economy grow faster. Switch to this as soon as it's available. Economic. Mercantilism. Although you would think that the extra spy specialist would be a boon, I find that giving up foreign trade routes is simply too much to sacrifice. I typically avoid this civic. Free trade, a great no-brainer civic to adopt until state property becomes available. State property. This civic's wonderful for an espionage warmonger. First, the tech needed to use the civic grants you a great spy if you're first to reach it, which you should since it's a beeline target, and also grants the powerful intelligence agency. That's the science that gives you the agency, which boosts your espionage. Secondly, this tech has many other wonderful benefits for the warmonger. The most obvious is the +10% production, which enables you to build more units. The less obvious is the fact that the workshops now have +1 food. You may be thinking, how does this help my production? It's very easy. With state property enabled, workshops are now food neutral instead of detracting from your food total. Thus, a grassland with a workshop now gives 2 food and 3 hammers instead of 1 food and 3 hammers. This civic enables you to turn even areas with any hills into great production sites. Finally, the elimination of distance-based maintenance on your cities helps keep maintenance on your hopefully sprawling empire down. Also, not being able to use corporations isn't so bad, since hopefully all the great people you'll be generating should be great spies, which confound corporations anyway. Environmentalism. Only adopt this if you're a tree-hugging hippie who can stand the thought of virtual global warming, or if your cities are in desperate need of help. Otherwise, state property is vastly superior. Those are the economic civics. Religious civics. Organized religion. Since religious texts will not be a priority, it's unlikely that you'll have access to this early enough for it to be useful. I skipped over it in favor of theocracy. Theocracy. The +2 experience point to military units helpful. I recommend using this while planning to gear up for war. Pacifism. The 100% great people points help generate great spies faster. I typically use pacifism to help alleviate the fact that you can only run spy specialists until Constitution. One spy specialist until Constitution. After I unlock Constitution, I typically switch to theocracy. Free religion. I don't recommend this civic. The experience or great people points from theocracy pacifism are too useful. Experience or great people points. Not to mention the fact that having a state religion can be a lifesaver diplomatically. I only recommend adopting this if most of the world has adopted it too, and thus you no longer benefit diplomatically from having a religion. By the way, or if they all have a different one and you want to avoid selecting a particular one or being forced to select one. Victory. The ultimate victory condition you're pursuing is the space race. After you become a world power in the Renaissance, which you should if you utilize the Ottoman and espionage correctly, your goal is to conquer as much land as possible, preferably from relatively strong opponents. Prior to the Renaissance, you only want to declare war on enemies weaker than you in order to make your empire swell. During and after the Renaissance, you want to start eliminating long-term rivals who might potentially beat you to the space race. By conquering relatively powerful neighbors, you increase your own production and research power and weaken theirs, thus increasing your chance of space race while decreasing theirs. Particularly easy targets are neighbors foolish enough to adopt free religion while surrounded by allies of your religion. It's fairly easy to bribe civs with state religions into declaring war on former allies when they adopt free religion. Near the end of the game, you have two main strategies available to you to ensure your victory in the space race. The first is a military-focused path, where you declare war on anyone who even thinks about getting close to completing a spaceship. At this point in the game, you're not worried about keeping and maintaining an empire, so swiftly capture and raze their biggest cities into the ground. This will hamper their research and production significantly, and if you do it enough, will make them unable to complete the space race effectively. Your second option is to put your massive espionage point total to good use by constant spy harassment. Find out which cities are building spaceship parts and constantly send spies to destroy production-rich tiles. Sabotage production, destroy buildings that give production bonuses, forges, factories, etc., or send the city into revolt. Basically, use all the spy tools available to you so that your enemy is constantly delayed by slow production. Typically, the war path works better on civs that hate you, while the spy path works better on friendly civs. If another civ is particularly close to building a spaceship, it might do well to do both methods, attacking them both militarily and spy harassment. The bad news. Although I feel espionage is a very strong option for Sulemein to take, this strategy is not without weakness. It's highly dependent on the Great Wall. If you get beaten to the Great Wall, you either should adopt a new strategy or just start your game over. Second, it takes a long time for it to fully develop. As I've shown above, an espionage-based strategy with Sulemein is very powerful in the Renaissance and beyond, but it takes a lot of careful preparation to get to that point. In the early game, play very diplomatically and do everything you can within reason to appease your tech-stealing target and the powerful players around you. Feel free to declare war and take over the lands of weak neighbors, particularly those that are different religions and are at war with said tech friend and powerful neighbors, but do not play too aggressively. Tech stealing also requires a lot of patience. Gathering up enough espionage points to steal a tech is a long-term investment. Sometimes you have to wait a long time for the AI to research that one tech in particular. This can be alleviated occasionally if the AI is researching a trivial tech you already have. You can gift or trade them the tech and hopefully they'll begin researching something you don't have. You'll also have to live with the fact that you're very rarely to be the first to a tech unless you explicitly beeline towards it, which you should for communism, gunpowder, etc. This means I typically give up the ever-coveted liberalism free tech. Finally, espionage requires a lot of micromanagement. You have to constantly be assessing your enemies and figuring out which of them is most likely to have the techs you want to steal. Then you have to send spies their way, find the city that it's not only closest, but also shares your state religion and doesn't have a security bureau. Some Civ players may not enjoy the level of micromanagement that espionage adds, and if you're not playing to have fun, then why are you playing? Espionage is easily the most underutilized feature of the Beyond the Sword expansion, but one that, if properly utilized and cultivated, can easily give you a slew of new options to approach your game. So I challenge you Civ players who haven't given Espionage a fair trial to do so. Sulemein, the Spy King, will not disappoint you.